Welcome back, students, to Love That Dog, Lesson 3. And here, of course, is our Bitmoji classroom again. So you've already listened to Lesson 1, Lesson 2, and we're going to have Lesson 3. As a reminder, underneath are other books written by Sharon Creech that you can check out. Hate That Cat, Walk Two Moons, Moo. And then underneath that are the poems that Sharon Creech has incorporated inside of her book here, Love That Dog. And there are links to each of them. When you hold it down, you can link to the red wheelbarrow that they mentioned a few times. So here it is. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow, glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. So the poems again that were referenced are linked on the Bitmoji classroom, and you can click on them. Remember the tiger poem that was already talked about, the dog poem by Valerie Worth. This was Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. Now, this one, I have a copy of this in my own personal library. The illustrations that were done by Susan Jeffers is just absolutely beautiful. And this is the second page of 3 more poems that were mentioned. The Pasture by Robert Frost, Street Music by Arnold Adolph, Love That Boy by Walter Dean Myers. And we're going to look at this poem a little later in the lesson. March 7th. I was a little embarrassed when people said things to me like, "Neat poem, Jack," and "How did you think of that, Jack?" And I really, really liked the one you put up about the tree that is shaped like a tree, not a fake looking tree, but like a real tree with straggly branches. Of course, last lesson we talked about concrete poems and how some poems take the shape of what they're talking about. But I want to know who the unknown poet is in our class who wrote that. Why didn't he or she want to put his or her name on it? Was it like me when I didn't think my words were poems? Maybe you will tell the unknown tree poet that his or her tree poem is really a poem, a really good poem too. March 14th. That was the best poem you have read yesterday by Mr. Walter Dean Myers. The best poem ever. I am sorry I took the book home without asking. I only got one spot on it. That's why the page is torn. I tried to get the spot out. I copied that best poem and hung it on my bedroom wall right over my bed where I can see it when I'm lying down. Maybe you could copy it too and hang it on the wall in our class where we could see it when we were sitting at our desks doing our stuff. I sure liked that poem by Mr. Walter Dean Myers called Love That Boy because of 2 reasons. I liked it. One is because my dad calls me in the morning just like that. He calls, "Hey there, son." And also because when I had my yellow dog, I loved that dog, and I would call him like this. I'd say, "Hey there, Sky." His name was Sky. I want to point out a few things on here. Again, remember, putting words on the page a certain way calls to those words, right? So I copied the best, all cap, poem and hung it on my bedroom wall right over my bed where I can see it when I'm lying down. Look at the word lying down, both words by themselves, and going in a downward motion, almost like we're moving down onto the bed. Another thing I want to point out is I had told you earlier that titles of a book get underlined if you're on paper or italicized, meaning the letters are on an angle if you're on a computer. But poems actually get quotations. Love That Boy, and the poem, of course, is at the end of the book that you can read and linked on the Bitmoji classroom. March 22nd. My yellow dog followed me everywhere, Every which way I turned, he was there wagging his tail and slobbering out of his mouth when he was smiling at me all the time, as if he was saying, "Thank you, thank you, thank you for choosing me," and jumping up on his shaggy, straggly paws. On my chest, he was trying to hug the insides right out of me. And when us kids were playing outside kicking the ball, he'd chase after it and push it with his nose, push, 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 and getting slobber all over the ball. But no one cared because he was such a funny dog. That dog Sky, that straggly, furry, smiling dog Sky. And I'd call him every morning, every evening. "Hey there, Sky." March 27th. Yes, you can type up what I wrote about my dog Sky, but don't type up the other secret one I wrote, the one all folded up in the envelope with the tape on it. That one uses too many of Mr. Walter Dean Myers' words, and maybe Mr. Walter Dean Myers would get mad at that. Of course, we know what that means if you copy somebody's words, right? We've used that word in a few of our lessons this fall. That would be plagiarism, which you are not allowed to do unless you get the proper credit. April 4th. I was very glad to hear that Mr. Walter Dean Myers is not the sort of person who would get mad at a boy for using some of his words. And thank you for typing up my secret poem that uses so many of Mr. Walter Dean Myers' words. And I like what you put. At the top, inspired by Walter Dean Myers. That sounds good. Now, that sounds good to my ears. Now, no one will think I just copied because I couldn't think of my own words. They will know I was inspired by Mr. Walter Dean Myers. But don't put it on the board, okay? Is Mr. Walter Dean Myers a live person? And if he is, do you think he would ever come to our city, to our school, to our class? And if he did, we should hide my poems with his words, hide it real good, just in case he would get mad about that. April 9th. No, 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 no. I can't do it. You should do it. You're a teacher. April 12th. I don't agree that Mr. Walter Dean Myers might like to hear from a boy who likes his poem. I think Mr. Walter Dean Myers would like to hear from a teacher who uses big words and knows how to spell and to type. April 17th. Dear Mr. Walter Dean Myers, you probably don't want to hear from me because I'm only a boy and not a teacher, and I don't use big words, and you probably won't read this, or even if you do read it, you probably are way too busy to answer it, let alone do the thing I'm going to ask you. And I want you to know that's okay, because our teacher says writers are very, 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 very busy trying to write their words, and the phone is ringing, the fax is going, and the bills need paying, and sometimes they get sick. I hope you're not sick, Mr. Walter D. Myers. Or their family gets sick, or the electricity goes off, or the car needs fixing, or they have to go to the grocery store or the laundry or clean up messes. I don't know how you find the time to write your words if you have to do all that stuff, and maybe you should get a helper. So what I'm asking you is this. If you ever get time to leave your house, and if you ever feel like visiting a school where there might be some kids who like your poems, would you ever maybe think about coming to our school, which is a clean place with mostly nice people in it? And I think our teacher, Miss Stretchberry, would maybe even make brownies for you because she sometimes makes them for us. I hope I haven't too much stopped you from doing your writing of words and fixing your car and getting groceries and all that stuff just to read this letter, which probably is taking you maybe 15 minutes. And in that time, you could have written a whole new poem, or at least the start of one. And so I am sorry for taking up your time. And I understand if you can't come to our clean school and read some of your poems to us and let us see your face, which I bet is a friendly face. My name is Jack. By Mr. Walter Dean Myers. April 20th. Did you mail it yet? Did he answer yet? April 24th. Months? It might take months for Mr. Walter Dean Myers to answer my letters if he answers it. I didn't know until you explained that the letter has to go to Mr. Walter Dean Myers Publishing Company. Then someone at the publishing company has to sort all the mail, not just my letter, but hundreds and hundreds of letters of hundreds of authors, all that big mess of mail piled up, and someone sorting all that mail, and then the letters for Mr. Walter Dean Myers go to him, and maybe he's away, maybe he's on vacation, maybe he's sick, maybe he's hiding in a room writing poems, maybe he's babysitting his children or his grandchildren, if he's married and stuff. Or maybe he has to go to the dentist or get that car fixed, or maybe someone died. I really hope someone did not die. So if you ask me, it could take him years to get around to answering that letter. So I guess you'd better just forget about it, not count on it. Get it out of our minds. Do something else. Forget it. April 26th. Sometimes when you are trying not to think about something, it keeps popping back into your head. You can't help it. And you think about it and think about it and think about it until your brain feels like a squashed pea. I love this simile here. Until your brain feels like a squashed pea. I can visualize that, right? You ever squish your peas on your plate? It's a very good visualization for us. May 2nd. Yes, you can type up that thing about trying not to think about something, but you better leave my name off of it because it was just words coming out of my head and I wasn't paying too much attention to which words came out when. May 7th. Maybe you should show me how to use the computer and then I could type up my own words. May 8th. I didn't know about the spell check thing inside the computer. It is like a miracle little brain in there, a little helper brain. But I am a slow typer person. Did you say there's a teacher typing thing in that computer too? Will it help me type better and faster? Tap, 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 tap. So my fingers can go as fast as my brain? May 14th. I typed this up myself. My sky. We were outside in the street, me and some other kids kicking the ball before dinner, and Sky was chasing, with his feet going every which way and his tail wagging, and his mouth slobbering, and he was all over the place, smiling and wagging and slobbering and making us laugh, and my dad came walking up the street. He was way down there near the end. I could see him after he got off the bus, and he was walking, and I saw him wave, and he called out, "Hey there, son!" And so I didn't see the car coming from the other way until someone else, one of the big kids, called out, "Car!" And I turned around and saw a blue car splattered with mud, speeding down the road. Of course, I just want to stop right now. I just feel what's happening and what's about to happen, and it's making me a little anxious to read on. And I saw Sky going after the ball, wagging his tail, and I called him, "Sky, Sky," and he turned his head. But it was too late because the blue car, splattered with mud, hit Sky. Thud, 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 and kept on going in such a hurry, so fast, so many miles to go. It couldn't even stop, and Sky was just there in the road, lying on his side, with his legs bent funny and his side heaving, and he looked up at me, and I said, "Sky, Sky, Sky." And then my dad was there, and he lifted Sky out of the road and laid him on the grass, and Sky closed his eyes, and he never opened them again. So this is obviously a very powerful page, and the way the author put the words really makes us stop and pause and think. I'm just going to reread a part. Sky closed his eyes, and he never opened them again, ever. Really sad, right? When we lose that animal and never opened them again, ever. Very sad. May 15th. I don't know. If you put it on the board and people read it, it might make them sad. May 17th. Okay, I guess I'll put my name on it. But I hope it doesn't make people feel too sad. And if it does, maybe you should think of something to cheer everybody up. Like maybe some of those brownies you make, the chocolate ones that are so good. May 21st. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. That was the best news ever. I can't believe it. Mr. Walter Dean Myers is really coming to our school. He was coming to our city anyway to see his old buddy. And he would be honored to visit our clean school and meet the mostly nice kids who like his poems. We sure are lucky that his old buddy lives in our town. Wow. May 28th. The bulletin board looks like it's blooming words with everybody's poems up there all on all those colored sheets of paper, yellow, blue, pink, red, green. And the bookcase looks like it's sprouting books, all of them by Mr. Walter Dean Myers, lined up, looking back at us, waiting for Mr. Walter Dean Myers himself to come to our school, right in our classroom. Wow. I want to go back because this just helps me visualize so much. Close your eyes. Listen to this simile, comparison using like or as, of the bulletin board. Ready? The bulletin board looks like it's blooming words with everybody's poems up there on all those colored sheets of paper, yellow, blue, pink, red, green. Blooming, right? Like a flower. And all the pretty colors. And the bookcase looks like it's sprouting books, again growing, right? Sprouting books, all of them by Mr. Walter Dean Myers. Such beautiful visualization we have. May 29th. I can't sleep. I can't wait. I can't sleep. Are you sure you hid my poem that was inspired by Mr. Walter Dean Myers? I don't want to do anything to upset him. June 1st, Mr. Walter Dean Myers Day. I never in my whole life ever heard anybody who could talk like Mr. Walter Dean Myers. All of my blood in my veins was bubbling, and all my thoughts in my head were buzzing, and I wanted to keep Mr. Walter Dean Myers at our school forever. Again, this word, the last word we're looking at on the line all by itself. June 6th. Dear Mr. Walter Dean Myers, thank you 100 million times for leaving your work and your family and your things people have to do to come and visit us in our school, in our class. We hope you like your visit. We think maybe you did because you were smiling all over the place. And when you read your poems, you had the best voice, low and deep and friendly and warm, like it was reaching out and wrapping us all up in a big squeeze. And when you laughed, you had the best laugh I've ever heard in my life, like it was coming from way down deep and bubbling up, rolling and tumbling out into the air. We hope we didn't ask you too many questions, but we thank you for answering every which one, especially for saying you would be flattered if someone used some of your words, and especially if they added a note that they were inspired by Walter Dean Myers. And it was nice of you to read all of our poems on the bulletin board, and I hope it didn't make you too sad when you read the one about my dog Sky getting smooshed on the road. And I think you liked the brownies too, right? Thank you for coming to see us, Mr. Walter Dean Myers. Inside this envelope is a poem. Using some of your words, I wrote it. It was inspired by you, Mr. Walter Dean Myers, from your #1 fan, Jack. Wow. Look how Jack has grown from the beginning of the book in September to June. Think about how Jack has grown. We'll add that to our list. Love That Dog, inspired by Walter Dean Myers by Jack. Love that dog, like a bird loves to fly. I said I love that dog, like a bird loves to fly. Love to call him in the morning, love to call him, hey there, sky. Beautiful. Here I put the two poems side by side. So we're going to read the Walter Dean Myers poem, Love That Boy. It's actually just the first verse, the first stanza, and then we'll read Love That Dog and see how they're similar. Walter Dean Myers, Love That Boy. Love that boy, like a rabbit loves to run. I said, love that boy, like a rabbit loves to run. Love to call him in the morning. Love to call him, hey there, son. So again, that's the first stanza of Walter Dean Myers. And in the book, Love That Dog, Jack says he wrote his poem, Love That Dog, because he was inspired. So let's see what his says. Love that dog, like a bird loves to fly. I said, love that dog, like a bird loves to fly. Love to call him in the morning. Love to call him, hey there, sky. So, very close, obviously, and many lines are the same. I'm not too sure an author would like you to copy his words almost verbatim, word for word. There's a word for that I've said already in the lesson called plagiarism, and I really think this kind of crosses the line. Let's go back to our notes we've been taking. So on your paper, you can continue your notes. And we've been working on character development. So in the beginning, Jack, in September, he was very insecure. He doesn't like poetry, does not want to share, doesn't understand poetry. Remember the red wheelbarrow? He had no idea what was going on. He didn't understand why that made a poem. And then in the middle, he learned, Jack in the middle, up to the beginning of March, he's becoming more confident. He seems to be enjoying poetry now, and he starts to add his names to poems. So now from March to June, a lot has changed with Jack since the beginning. He's grown tremendously. So I want to go back to the book. So now in March, he really starts to change. He even indicates that he loves Mr. Walter Dean's Myers poem. Remember, you always want to go back to the text and support your thinking of how the character changes. So right here is how I'm supporting it. Right now he's saying that it's the best poem ever. He even kind of gets in trouble for taking the book home and ripping the page a little. He wants the teacher to also hang it up on the wall. Of course, the poem was Love That Dog. And he says why he loves it. Then, of course, in April, he's kind of fighting with the teacher. Not fighting, but he's like, no, I'm not going to do it. I can't do it. You should do it. And we don't really know yet what he's talking about. Of course, we already read it, so now we know that she, the teacher, Miss Stretchberry, wanted him to write to Mr. Walter Dean Myers, inviting him to the school. And this shows a little bit more of growth in confidence, because it takes a lot to write to an adult and ask, oh, please, would you come to our school? We're friendly here, or mostly friendly, he says. So again, his character is growing. So I'm going to share that screen and add to it. So right here at the end of March, he is more confident, and we see that from the letter he wrote to Mr. Walter Dean Myers. He also loves poetry now. his teacher, Mrs. Stretchberry, shared her love for something, and then he ended up loving it as well. And of course, his favorite poem was Love That Boy, and then he emulated it and wrote Love That Dog. So his influence was the word he used. Also, we see here on entry, let's see what the date is, June 6th, after he met Walter Dean Myers, he says, from your number one fan, Jack. And of course, that is the greatest thing about reading, whether it's a novel or a poem. Sometimes we fall in love with the style of the poet, in this case, Mr. Walter Dean Myers, or the style of the author. Like some of you might have really enjoyed this book by Sharon Creech, and now will be inspired to read other books written by that same person, kind of like a domino effect. So I really enjoyed this book, Love That Dog by Sharon Creech. And it was a very simple setting, just the schoolroom, classroom, and it took place, like we said, from September to June. And the characters, very simple, 2 characters, but we really only heard from Jack. And then, of course, actually, we can add Walter Dean Myers as kind of a character. He comes in at the end, and maybe even you can say his classmates are mentioned in the book, but very simple, very simple. I love how the cover started us off into the story. Like, it was very intriguing to me. Why is this cover just solid yellow? So it leads us into the story, which was great. And we found out why it was yellow, because he ends up talking about his beloved dog that was yellow. And this book really shows how Jack grew throughout the beginning to the middle to the end with the help of his teacher, Mrs. Stretchberry. So I really enjoyed this book, and maybe we'll get a little taste of one of her other books in Hate That Cat, which was an excerpt written in the back. So now you see I'm back on Class Link. I had looked on the Henrico Public Library, where I usually check out my ebooks, right, to see if they had Hate That Cat. Of course, in the back of the ebook I already borrowed for Love That Dog is an excerpt that we're going to read to try to see if maybe that's the next book we want to read, either individually or as a class. So I went to Class Link and I tried the Hoopla Pamunkey Library. Henrico only had an audio version of Hate That Cat. And I prefer to look at the words and read along. So I did find it, and here it is on Hoopla through the Pamunkey Library, Hate That Cat by Sharon Creech, a novel, part 2 of the Jack series. So it makes sense to follow up right away with this book. And of course, that book was very short. Return to Mrs. Stretchberry's class with Jack, the reluctant poem, who over the course of the year encounters new and challenging things like metaphors, alliterations, onomatopoeia, and one mean, fat, black cat. The Newbery Medal winner, author of Walk Two Moons by Sharon Creech, introduced Jack in Love That Dog, a New York Times bestseller. Both Love That Dog and Hate That Cat are approachable, funny, warm-hearted introductions to poetry told from the point of view of a very real kid wrestling with school assignments. These books are fast reads that will welcome by middle graders as they too wonder how poetry and schoolwork connect with their interests and how to uncover their true voices. In Hate That Cat, Jack is only trying to save that fat black cat stuck in the tree by his bus stop, but the cat scratches him instead. At school, Mrs. Stretchberry begins teaching new poems, everything from William Carlos Williams to Valerie Worth to T.S. Eliot. As the year progresses, Jack gradually learns to love that cat and find new ways to express himself. So I could borrow this book if I wanted. I'm not going to check that out right now. But let's go ahead and read the excerpt that we have in the back of the book I already borrowed. Here we go.
excerpt from Hate That Cat. Read an excerpt from Sharon Creech's new novel, Hate That Cat. Jack, room 204, Mrs. Stretchberry, September 12th. I hate that cat. I like a dog hates a rat. I said, I hate that cat. Like a dog hates a rat. Hate to see it in the morning. Hate to see that FAT black cat. September 13th. Sorry, I didn't know you like cats. Didn't know you have one, of course. Some of you know that I love cats and don't really like dogs too much. Of course, my cat is named Meredith. Obviously, the teacher must have a cat too. September 14th. More poetry? You probably think we will remember what we learned last year, right? What if we don't remember? What if our brain shrunk? What if it's too hard? But I'm glad you are my teacher again. I hope you will keep moving up a grade every year. Along with me, you understand my brain. I love it again, remember? Where words are put on the page help us really focus. You understand my brain. September 19th. No, I can't write any more about my dog Sky. Maybe all of the words about Sky flew out of my head last year. I think about him all the time and I see him in my mind. And some of his yellow fur is still on my yellow chair. And sometimes I think I can hear him. Run, the sounds he made when he was happy. But no, I can't write about Sky. Anymore. Maybe I could write about a cat. A mean cat. A crazy, mean, fat, black cat. Although my Uncle Bill, who was a teacher in college, said those words I wrote about Sky were not poems. He said they were just words coming out of my head. And that poem has to rhyme and have regular meter and symbols and metaphors and onomatopoeia something and alliter something. And I wanted to punch him. September 21st. Another thing Uncle Bill said was that my line should be LONGER, like in real writing. But here is what happens when I try to make them longer. The page is too wide and the words get all mumbled jumbled and it makes my eyes hurt. All that white space, the edge of the paper so far away, in order to get all the words down that are coming out of my head, I have to forget the commas and the periods and I have to go back and stick them in all over the place like this, which looks, if you ask me, stupid. But if you write short lines, a person knows where to breathe, short or long. And I hate to read those long lines, and I don't want to write them either. Didn't Mrs. Tavaro say that multiple times in this lesson? That sometimes you want to have those short lines so you know where to stop, where to breathe, what words that the author, or in this case, poet, wants to emphasize. September 26th. I wish you would tell my Uncle Bill all those things you said today about our own rhymes and our own images bouncing around in our words and making them poems. And yes, I understand that if I am ever president of the United States, I might be expected to write very, very long lines. But in the meantime, I can make my lines short if I want to. But even if I told my Uncle Bill all that stuff, he wouldn't believe you. He likes to argue. And my mother likes my short lines. She runs her fingers down them and then taps her lips once, twice. And I think I understood what you said about automata something and alliter something not having to be in a poem, and how sometimes they enrich a poem, but sometimes they can make a poem sound purple. Purple! Ha ha ha! I love this over here. Taps her lips once, twice. How many words do you see here? 2. 1, 2. Once, twice. I love that. I love how that was done. October 3rd. Okay. I will learn how to spell alliteration and onomatopoeia, right? And I'll practice them just in case I ever need them to enrich something. Ready? I can't do it. Brain frozen. First, you need to have something to write about. You just can't alliterate an onomatopoeia all over the place, can you? Oh, looks like a good book. I'm going to have to check it out and finish reading it. I hope you do too. And I'd love to hear if you read it or any other book by Sharon Creech. And it's always fun to learn about the author. And you can go to her website, which I did before. Here it is. Here's her website with the list of books that she has written. So check it out. Happy reading, everybody.